Thank you, and thank you to everybody that is here. And I was able to listen to briefly your comments, Tina, and you are correct. I'm very fortunate to be here in Ottawa with the amazing staff of the CAFC who have done just tireless work over the last few days, where we had 40 of our fire chiefs with us here on the Hill, promoting some significant fire service issues. It's so lovely to see so many people here again engaged over the next 2 days. And so let me welcome all members of the fire service, our distinguished guests and speakers, friends of the fire sector from across Health Canada and other federal departments and industry. For those that I haven't had the privilege to meet, my name is Ken McMullen. I'm the president of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs and the fire chief in Red Deer, Alberta, although today I am still in Ottawa. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to the first of a series of firefighter cancer workshops, together titled Building Out the Firefighter Cancer Awareness, Prevention, and Access to Care Puzzle. I want to begin today by recognizing close to 200 people who have signed up for this workshop. We have come from all parts of this country. Today, I am on the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin people, where we, as the CFC, have our national office. We recognize them as the traditional keepers of the Ottawa River watershed and its tributaries. We recognize the hurts and harms of the past and strength and resilience of the people. The goal of gathering today will be to hear as many ideas as we can about firefighter cancer awareness, prevention, and access to care to help inform a firefighter cancer framework for Canada. This opportunity is thanks to MP Sherry Romanado, Parliamentary Secretary for Emergency Preparedness, who led Bill C-224 in such a gracious manner, engaging all types of firefighters, all parts of the fire sector, all of her colleagues across different parties in the House of Commons. We thank Senator Hussein Yousaf, who did the same for Bill C-224 in the Senate, and for all senators who supported this. Although MP Romanado wanted to be here today, but if you'd been following the news, you know that our elected officials are in the House. We wish them courage and clarity in their work, and we hope that they too will get home for the holiday break that everybody needs. Finally, we thank our friends and colleagues at Health Canada, just to name a few: James Morden, Miranda McPherson, Nina Dobbin, Tim Singer, who not only heard the call, you are active and engaged listeners. Your desire to not only help our officials get the job done on Bill C-224, but to get it right inspires us to help you in every way that we possibly can. So again, we thank you. We thank you for your support and funding of these workshops, and I am looking forward to introducing and hearing from Health Canada's Assistant Deputy Minister, Matthew Jones. Thank you for joining us, Matthew, and to the Minister, who I know would like to have been here, and for the extraordinary team of policy leaders. So if we'd like to start with a few brief remarks, I'll ask Matthew to bring some greetings.
Happy to do that, and thanks for including me. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Great. So hi everyone, my name is Matt Jones. I am the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Healthy Environments and Consumer Safety Branch at Health Canada. Prior to that, I was the head of the COVID-19 Testing Secretariat, and before that, for many years, I was at Environment Canada, most recently as the ADM of the Climate Change Branch there. In my current role at Health Canada, I have to say I'm very fortunate to work on a number of really interesting files, regulating chemicals, working to phase out animal testing, setting water quality standards, recalling dangerous products. The group really does some really interesting and important work, and I have to say I find it all, I get a lot of job satisfaction from working on these important files, and I've been lucky in my career to be able to work on a number of interesting and important topics, and it feels good to make a positive contribution where we can. When I was considering taking on this particular role, I was able to go through the work of the branch and to try to understand, well, what the priorities were. And I have to say there was a couple of entries on that list that kind of jumped off the list. One was PFAS, so forever chemicals, and the other was the Firefighters action plan. So the more we know about PFAS, the more concerning it is. And the reality that firefighters are getting cancer at quite elevated levels is kind of outrageous, right? Kind of infuriating, and it's kind of a privilege, but also some pressure to work on this file to figure out what can be done and what more we can be doing. So it's all very motivating, and I can tell you that the team at Health Canada is extremely motivated to address these two kind of closely related issues. So we're really pleased to participate and to co-host this event with you. I feel like some good work has been done so far. All right, we've regulated some problematic flame retardants, and we did publish the State of PFAS report with some draft proposals around how we could manage those chemicals and reduce exposures. And we're reviewing stakeholder feedback now. I can tell you it's not all positive. There are concerns about our efforts to regulate these chemicals, so it'll be a long road and not a small undertaking. And we've also been doing a lot of science and a lot of research to kind of build our understanding and to better understand the risks and the opportunities for reducing these chemicals and their exposures. We've hosted some important workshops with firefighters and over the last couple of years that has really helped to shape and drive the research agenda. And I'm pleased that there is more research funding headed in this direction, has been increasing, including some important work by the Canadian Institutes for Health Research and the Canadian Cancer Society. Not so long ago, Miranda and I were at the Senate hearing for Bill C-224, and having appeared before many House and Senate committees in the past, I was warning Miranda in advance that we might get a rough ride and some tough questions. And I ended up feeling pretty foolish about those predictions, because it was just such an overwhelming consensus, and all party support, and strongly so, is not something that I am used to from my past experiences in committees. And it was really quite inspiring and encouraging, and I think that it also provides us with a real opportunity. So really pleased to be here, really pleased to participate, and looking forward to getting into the real work of kind of sorting out our best practices, our options, our ideas, and looking forward to hearing from others. So with that, back to you, Chief McMullen. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Matthew, for your continued support. I agree with you entirely. I was fortunate to also testify to Senate with my colleague from the IFF, Neil McMullen. And I'll tell you, quite honestly, we could have exchanged scripts. Although I said fire chiefs, he said firefighters. The message was the same. And to your point, the unanimous support was heartwarming, to say the least. So I've been in your same shoes and felt the same way. This is very exciting as we continue to work on ensuring the safety of those that ultimately are doing what they can to protect Canadians. So thank you for your continued work on that, Matthew, and thank you for being here over the next couple of days. I'm also looking forward to some remarks from my colleague, Mr. Rob Schweitzer, Executive Director of BC Wildfire, who will say a few words on behalf of Wildfire Firefighters. CAFC does not speak for wildfire firefighters, but over the past year, our domains and many of the people within them have become fast friends, with the lines between us blurring. Thank you, Rob, for being here, and thank you to your colleagues for the tremendous work that they've done, particularly looking back at the fire season of 2023. We continue to work together, and we look forward to hearing from you and hearing from your members over the next couple of days. Over to you.
Thanks, Chief McMullen. Just doing a sound check. I'm coming through okay. Perfect. Yeah, good morning, everyone. As Chief McMullen mentioned, or good afternoon, I guess, for some of you. My name is Rob Schweitzer, and I'm the Executive Director with the BC Wildfire Service. I'm situated in Kamloops, British Columbia, and I'm calling in from the traditional territory of the Tecumseh peoples. I'm honored to live, work, and raise my family on their traditional lands. I just want to thank everyone, with the, today and with the council that for inviting me to speak on this critically important event, allowing me to provide the wildland fire perspective to the conversation. And as Chief McMullen alluded to, we really know the lines between structural and wildland fire are blurring. The risk to wildland firefighters is not limited to smoke produced in the wildland urban interface environment or non-vegetative fires alone. The wildfire smoke itself is a carcinogen. Uncontrolled exposure that wildland firefighters experience contributes to occupational history and the cumulative risk. And there's been a gap in the recognition of wildland firefighters in this space. This gap is due to difficulties of research on the fire line, a lack of advocacy, funding, and regulatory oversight. Fire lines are remote. They're logistically difficult and expensive to research. And there's a less of an understanding of how, when, and why exposure occurs, and really how to control it. Research often misses the highest exposure scenarios, underrepresenting the true exposure that wildland firefighters are experiencing. Some of the lack of recognition actually comes from cultural attitudes within wildfire itself. Beliefs that smoke is just part of the job. It's not bad for you. It's a bit of a badge of honor. It requires a fundamental shift in culture, beginning with education and training. And in general, the seasonality and the short-term nature of our workforce results in logistical barriers in tracking exposed workers, building those exposure profiles, and enrolling staff in medical surveillance programs and receiving off-season support. We need to advocate for wildland firefighter community to be recognized in this space. There must be an increased attention and funding giving to assessing and controlling exposures, because wildland firefighters are exposed more frequently and for longer durations than structural firefighters. They may not receive relief from that exposure for days or even weeks, given the nature of their work. They're not equipped with respiratory PPE, and they're not equipped with protective clothing nor skin decontamination. And they're also exposed to carcinogens even when there's no fire or smoke in the environment, such as silica dust and soil, chainsaw pump, and vehicle exhaust. The high rates of job turnover and the loss of experienced firefighters really negatively impact the ability for agencies across Canada to fight fire. Wildland fire agencies need to develop career-long firefighters to retain experience on the ground. And we must support the health of our firefighters so that the decades of repeated exposure do not result in the adverse health effects. Exposures during wildland firefighting are unique in the way that they're one of the few occupations that actually may get worse in the future, given the conditions that we're seeing. The research on the long-term health effects of structural firefighting is well documented, but for wildland firefighting, there's hardly anything at all. This makes it impossible to truly educate and inform our workforce. Wildland firefighting needs funding and research expertise to conduct long-term studies assessing both exposure and the outcomes. However, it's not all bad news, and I'd like to briefly share a few things that the BC Wildfire Service is doing to support occupational exposure research and prevention. So since 2019, BCWS has partnered with the University of Alberta to investigate exposure to polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and the efficacy of control strategies, including skin hygiene and respiratory protection. And based on this research, BCWS is prepared to implement multiple models of respiratory protection for optional use in 2024. BCWS and Health Canada, in partnership with Dr. White, are moving towards signing an MOU that will provide framework for working collaboratively on research related to firefighter cancer. To support the use of respiratory protection, we are developing a visual smoke exposure guide to aid crews in identifying smoky conditions. And the BC Wildfire Service is also partnering with the University of British Columbia in 2024 and 2025 to investigate cardiorespiratory health impacts of wildland firefighting. And this project will follow crews over 2 wildfire seasons, assessing the exposure and health outcomes on a longer basis, including the effect of off-season recovery. BCWS has conducted exposure assessments for carbon monoxide, which includes over 250 fire line shifts, resulting in the development of a safe work procedure for pump operation, and a follow-up project around chainsaw exhaust exposure, assessing CO and vibration effects. My agency is committed to operationalizing the outcome of health research efforts by developing occupational health and safety programming, which will include a respiratory protection program to support the implementation of respirators, and an exposure control plan to establish guidelines working within non-vegetative smoke. Although these are great initiatives and the right steps forward, so much more needs to be done in this field to better understand the risks posed to wildland firefighters and what we can do to mitigate these risks. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you today and provide a wildland firefighter perspective. Thank you.
Well, thank you again. And as I said in the onset, our worlds are getting much, much closer together, and we will continue to work collaboratively on issues that face firefighters straight across this country, regardless which jumpsuit you happen to be wearing or uniform you happen to be wearing the day of. So, Rob, we look forward to the continued conversation and collaborative work together. So thank you for being here. The voice of our wildland firefighters is not being missed in this conversation, and we'll do our best to ensure that that continues to happen. With that, we'll carry on. And finally, really most importantly, you are going to hear people talk about their personal and professional experiences and their recommendations. They are speaking and telling their stories to help us think and understand about different perspectives as what you can do. You are invited to follow along in some very personal journeys. You're invited to input your own thoughts on the Menti. You will need your smart device for this, and the codes that will appear for you are in the chat. For those who would like to continue on with Menti, please feel free to join the Menti through the code. Finally, our last speaker before the panel is the chair of our CAFC Cancer Committee, Mr. Graham Pawlett, who is also the past president of the Volunteer Firefighters of Canada. It was Graham who challenged the CAFC to create one of our most esteemed committees. And it's my pleasure to welcome Graham today to say a few words as our chair. Graham, if you are there, over to you. Just as Graham's logging on, I will tease that we're in the same hotel and perhaps we have the same IT issues. So Graham, if you are there, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. No video for you at the moment, but I had that same problem. But more importantly, it's your voice that matters at the moment.
Well, I think that's all you need to see. Although I did, just for the notice, I did iron my shirt today. But I am excited to be here. I'm glad to be in Ottawa too again. You know, so many wonderful things have been happening that I've heard about already in Ottawa. I'm meeting with my auxiliary with the Volunteer Firefighters of Canada. Just a little background, and Ken touched on this, was our committee. Now I'm part of NAC, the National Advisory Committee, with the CAFC, sorry. NAC is made up of various organizations or fire associations across the country. And, you know, the key parts of any fire issues that come to individuals get brought to NAC, and then NAC can take it on to the board. So firefighter cancer was came in. I was brought very closely to it back in 2020. and brought to the NAC just to sort of see what's out there provincially as far as regulations and who's doing what. There wasn't a whole lot out there. Some provinces have got some good things in place. The one thing that was noticeable was that the IAFF is doing a great job with their membership on promoting and educating their members on what to do and what not to do and train and so on and so forth. But there's some huge gaps across the country. So we brought that to the board of the CAFC, and I'm extremely grateful to see that they have taken this on. It's a huge challenge, but we have grown and have a lot of positive things, this being one of them, on what is happening. So I want to thank the not Health and Safety Committee, sorry, the Cancer Committee for their involvement. We have a number of active people that are getting involved all the time and really spreading the word and working towards us. Our special guests that are here today from Health Canada and other fire branches associated with our fire service in Canada. I want a special thanks for that, participating. And a special guest, as Ken alluded to, that are about to take on as our panelists, who are willing to share some of these somewhat private and scary moments that maybe they are going through. So there's a lot of positive things that I think we can learn from this. And I'm very excited to be part of this, and that things are happening. And I'm also excited that I finally got logged on. I have been trying since 10/2 here. So best things will are coming up here, and there's a lot of positive things. So I appreciate your time and being part of this group right now.
Well, Graham, although we can't see you just based on the video, we know that you're here. We hear your voice. You are supported, my good friend, as you have been in the past and will continue in the future as you go down your journey. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for your absolute unwavering work within our cancer committee. There is no better champion than yourself leading that helm. So thank you, Graham. I look forward to seeing you somewhere down in the lobby later today, where I will see your nicely pressed shirt. You wouldn't believe it. We are absolutely right on time. And this was better luck than better planning as technology is doing its thing. And we're thrilled. I see the participant numbers are at 120 folks that have taken time to hear these amazing individuals share some amazing stories. And thank you for your courage. Thank you for your commitment to ensure that we all learn and do better as a result of some changes that we can make going forward. So with that, let's start the workshop. Our first panel is about lived experiences. Every single firefighter knows someone who has been touched by cancer. These 5 individuals you will meet here today have an experience that's up close and personal. I know you want to hear from them directly, so let me just start the discussion by asking them to each introduce themselves and share a little bit about their experience. So we're going to start with Chief Fredericks. So Chief Fredericks, I'll ask you to please introduce yourself, your role in the fire service, and if you're so willing, your experience with firefighter cancer. Over to you, Chief.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. My name is John Fredericks. I'm the former chief of Yellowknife Fire Department. I was diagnosed in August of 2020 with a brain mass at our local hospital. On the way home from that scan, they called me back to do another scan, and that's when they found the mass. They walked me over to the emergency department, and they called University of Alberta Hospital in Edmonton, and they didn't have a bed. So I stayed at the emergency department for that day. So I convinced them to let me out and go home. And I went home, and that night I had a seizure and a stroke, and I landed back at the hospital there in ICU until I went to Edmonton in 3 days down to see a surgeon. She operated. It was inoperable. So she stitched me back up, sent me home. 10 days later, I went down to see the oncologist. That's when I learned that I had central nervous system lymphoma. My chances wasn't very good. He gave me a 20 to 30% chance of surviving the treatment, not beating the cancer. So it's the only trial that I had the chance to take, and I took it. And I had 20 to 40% chance of beating the cancer if I survived the treatment. So just to give you an overcast of what I went through, I went to Edmonton. I had 4 treatments. It's during the pandemic, and I was flying back and forth. I never got out of isolation when I got home. Until I had to go back. So it was hard on my system. They wiped out my whole immune system. So I was like down at 0. And on my 4th round of chemo, I had to take a shower every 4 hours. People that came in the room had to be gowned, masked, and gloved to change my bed and to attend to me. And I had to shower every 4 hours for the next 3 days. And then after that, I had my stem cell transplant. And after I just had my 3-year update in October, and I've been in remission for 3 years. So that's a snapshot of my picture. So thank you.
My friend, if you could see, there would be 123 applauses for you, John and Chief. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for the good news that we need that. We need you, my friend. We need you here to continue to battle with us to ensure that we are learning and making changes along the way. So Chief Fredericks, thank you so much for your story. What I'm going to do is we're going to ask all of the 5 panelists to share their story. We're going to come back. We're going to look at the Menti that's created as a result of those that are in the audience. And then time permitting, we're going to ask just some open floor questions. So that's the format for the next 55 minutes or so. Captain Jenn Dawkins. Captain, would you please be willing to give us a little bit of your story?
Thank you. Thank you again for inviting me. So I'll try and keep it quick. In 3 days, it will be my anniversary of my diagnosis 4 years ago. So December 10th, 2019, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma. So I had breast cancer. That was a result of just a regular routine mammogram. I actually hadn't gone for my regular mammograms as often as I should have. That wouldn't have changed in my instance. I am grateful it wouldn't have changed my situation. It was still relatively small, and they said the doctor said they probably wouldn't have noticed it the year before. But that doesn't remove the fact that I didn't do them, and I probably should have. And so I need to highlight that. So after that diagnosis, that was in December, about 5 weeks later, I had a single mastectomy. And then after I recovered from the mastectomy, I underwent chemotherapy for several months during the pandemic. My experience, I would say, one of the things, that I'm grateful for is that it was presumptive legislation here in British Columbia, so I was covered. I feel grateful that I had a tremendous amount of support from my union along the way. I would, when I'm thinking about my experience, and there's some questions about, the questions that I was given in advance were, what are the gaps and what are the recommendations? Now, would you like me to share some of those kinds of things at this time? Perfect. Okay. So one of the gaps I would say would be for some of the non-unionized firefighters, what is the supports that are out there? When I was diagnosed in December of 2019. I didn't really know anything about breast cancer. I'm a pretty studious type person, so of course I do everything I can to learn what I need to learn, but I knew nothing about it. But what I would say is that, you know, from from an organizational support, what kinds of supports are out there within the non-union organizations? I had people from my union coaching me and helping me along the medical journey, if you will, of course, because it was work safe. I booked off immediately on sickness. At the time I was a lieutenant, and I'm a frontline firefighter. So I'm out there doing the thing. And I actually had to use my sick time originally for my sickness, or for my illness. It wasn't actually work safe until they didn't consider it work safe until my surgery date. So I'm grateful my union fought and had fought to have that reversed. So it was considered after a fight to be able to have that as work safe immediately. The idea that I would be out there managing other people's emergencies as a lieutenant in the fire service while I'm in this kind of unknown gray area, not really knowing anything about the breast cancer, not knowing, of course, you're just given the diagnosis. You don't necessarily know what you still have to go see the doctors. Do you need to, at that time, I didn't even know if I needed a mastectomy. I didn't even know if you wouldn't know if you needed chemotherapy. You wouldn't know if you needed radiation. So after I had the mastectomy, they took a piece of the cancer and they sent it down to the United States for what's called oncotype testing. And that oncotype testing determined the grade of aggressiveness of that cancer. And that is what warranted that I had to do the chemotherapy. So so I would say that would also be a little bit of a gap there. It's the idea that I was supposed to be going out on the trucks until I had the surgery, and I would just be. It's kind of interesting. Here I am today. Each year I go back. I still have one remaining real breast, and so I go back for mammograms annually in the fall of each year. The first year was automatic. In 2020, that year I had a mammogram and they automatically did an ultrasound. 2021, they didn't do the ultrasound. And so I had assumed that was what I was supposed to have done. I went in, I was actually quite upset. I was like, they're not giving me the right tests that I need. And so I talked to my doctor. She contacted the hospitals, and the hospital booked me in again. So I had to go back for another testing for the ultrasound. 2021, the same thing happened. I was not given the appointment that my doctor had asked for, the ultrasound and the mammogram and the ultrasound together. She called them back. They managed to get me in. So that was in 2021. Same thing happened in 2022. 2023, same thing this year. My doctor went back. The radiologists have outright refused to do an ultrasound. So I was only given a mammogram. And I don't know if anybody's been watching the news, but there's been media attention that that women with dense breasts are better served to have an ultrasound than a mammogram. So that's on the news. Yet I'm still a frontline firefighter. I went back after being off of the trucks for a couple of years. I went back. This week I'm working as a training officer, but I am a full-time captain in the fire company, and the hospitals have refused to do recommended testing. So that was one of my experiences and perhaps one of the gaps. I would like to say, in terms of some recommendations, with my experience is, I would be curious to find out about the latency periods. So they're different all over the country for different cancers. And so when you look at places like California that cancer is just covered, I would be curious to have, I would like to see maybe some of those latency periods, I guess, re-examined. I would also, again, the viewpoint of the medical community towards testing, which really speaks to what I was just speaking about, having, consistent testing throughout someone's career, I think is huge, right? Early detection is, equivalent to better success rates, right? So, and survival rates. And I think that's really important because, we can take all the carcinogens away, but we're still going to be woken up and we're still going to have hormonal disruptions, and we're going to still have all of those things that are also associated. So, that's kind of where I would think about that. And I would also, I'm looking at some notes. I didn't want to make sure I captured all of these things. I think, oh yes. And obviously being a female in the fire service, I began my fire service career in 1997 as a volunteer, and then went on to a career department in 2000. And through that time, I've seen, men's reproductive cancers covered. I've seen, I'd like to see women's reproductive cancers equal to that of men. I recognize, that there's often, the interest of like doing research, but sometimes that research is just, sometimes it feels like a delay tactic, and we're never really going to have the right numbers to have the same kind of research for women. So I would just be curious about that. But, and then circling back to my experience, I would just, in closing, I've been a huge advocate for breast cancer since my diagnosis, because I didn't know anything. I didn't really know anybody, or maybe I did and I just never paid attention. So I've been a pretty open book when it comes to this. I did a podcast with the police chief in Delta a few years ago, just explaining my journey and managing that. And I feel pretty passionate about sharing that so that others will have a better experience, because these experiences aren't going to go away, whether you're a firefighter or not. So thank you again for allowing me to share. I tried to say all of those things really fast because I know there's 5 of us. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. Thank you very much, Jen. Thanks for sharing. I think that what you speak to very much is in alignment with what the national framework work is now to be done. We've got the concept. Now we have to work out the details, and your questions about latency periods, your questions about what's covered in what province or territories, those are the conversations that we are having and we will continue to have. Jen, your story, again, heartwarming, and we're so thankful that you are healthy and you're back on the front lines doing what you love to do every day. So thanks for sharing your story. Hopefully we'll have time for some more questions. And if not, I know that our panelists are available. Now you have their names, you know who they are. You can contact them outside of this presentation today as well. So thank you. And I'm going to carry on and go to a good friend of mine. Somebody who I've known for a long time, and that's Captain Mary Fischer. So Mary, thanks for joining us.
I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks very much. My name is Mary Fischer. I'm a captain with the Calgary Fire Department, and I've been with Calgary for 22 years. And prior to that was a paid call firefighter in the township of Langley in BC. Prior to that, I did a season of Wildfire. So I've been lucky enough to experience fire in a lot of different aspects, and it's a very exciting career. And I've enjoyed a very relatively, well, up until now, very healthy career, which has been amazing. In the fall of 2021, much like my other panelists, in the middle of COVID, I was diagnosed with a very rare form of central nervous system cancer. It's an ependymoma, and it was a tumor that's lodged in my spinal cord. And it was diagnosed rather happenstance due to some symptoms I was having, and the healthcare system being backlogged due to COVID. I apologized to our Canadian medical system, but I went private and purchased an MRI where it was visible diagnosed, and then lucky enough, I was treated within about a month. It took about 4 weeks for the medical system to get the team of surgeons together to operate. And unfortunately, or fortunately, this particular type of tumor is the word benign is challenging, but is it's not known to metastasize outside of the central nervous system. So the chances of it spreading throughout the rest of my body are very slim. So the only treatment, because it's in the spinal cord itself, was surgery. So a team got together, and in the middle of COVID, I was able to have most of the tumor surgically removed. It was a 12-hour surgery. And unfortunately, due to the intricate nature of the spinal cord and the involvement of the tumor, it wasn't fully removed. So there still exists some. However, they did get a large, enough that I was happy. And found myself post-surgery with no function below my waist. So I think, and sorry, I should carry on with that. So stayed in hospital during COVID for 6 weeks, and then released back home with basically my own ability to try and rehab, because of course there was no spinal rehab available for, well, there's no spinal rehab available. So over the last couple of years, I've worked really, really hard and to try and get my motor function, my sensory function, and my muscle control back. And that seems to be going glacially, slowly, but it's going in the right direction. So I'm looking forward to hopefully going back to work in the new year in maybe a different role, but things are going as well as can be expected. What I do want to mention about some of the challenges that I had with this is that I did, as a member of the Calgary Fire Department, we have a very active union, and I have been, well, much like Jenn, well supported by my union. Unfortunately, this particular type of cancer is not considered presumptive, which is understandable. It's very rare. However, it's not recognized by many as a cancer because it doesn't metastasize outside of the spinal cord. So the odds of me getting a tumor regrowth or an additional tumor in my spinal cord or my central nervous system within the brain is high, but the chance of it spreading to other organs is very low. So that kind of puts me in this limbo state of, do I have cancer or don't I have cancer? And when exploring our presumptive legislation and exploring our WCB process, the WCB caseworkers would not even recognize it as a cancer, simply because it was a tumor. It wasn't actually considered a cancer. And so there's some limitations and gaps there. What else I want to make sure I'm aware, or that you're aware of in this progression, is that the Calgary Fire Department helped lobby the Alberta province way back in the early 2000s, and I was a member of the fire department at that point. And so our cancer awareness has been very, very high. So as a result, I have been quite active in my own personal health and making sure I do get regular tests and regular examinations. And we have a wellness department within the Calgary Fire Department that does annual medicals to look for certain cancers, which is amazing, but there's no way to detect the cancers that they're not looking for. So I have been diligent about all of the presumptive cancers that I could possibly get, looking for signs, symptoms, tests, whatever I can do to protect my health. It never occurred to me that I would get a rare form of cancer that's not often detected until complete paralysis occurs. So it, I guess that gap of awareness that, you know, firefighters are getting cancers, healthy firefighters are getting cancers that the average population doesn't get, and they're getting cancers that are not covered. And so we're kind of left on our own. And so luckily for me, I've got a tremendous support network, and I've been able to navigate through this recovery process. And my recovery, unfortunately, will not be complete for many, many years, but it's still it's going to progress, and I'm willing to work for that. But as far as, cancer legislation and cancer awareness, I'm a bit in limbo. It never occurred to me that I would get a cancer that would take away my ability to walk or move, or I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Help in the way that I've created a lifestyle, which I can. So that gap does exist with the WCB environment itself not recognizing it, with the legislation not recognizing it. I will be kind of on my own managing it, but at least something like this, I can definitely get the word out and make sure people are aware that, we're getting cancers that we're not getting support with as well. So thank you for that opportunity, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. And for somebody who thinks they're slowly progressing, I've seen you skiing in a new form. I've seen you horseback riding in a new form. Nothing will stop Mary Fischer. That I've known about Mary Fischer for as long as I've known you. We are so proud of you. We watch you every day make huge gains. We all support you. You don't need us on your back, but you got us, every single one of us. So keep up the great work, Mary. Thanks for all you do in the background. You're a huge supporter of many of our committees, not just this one. And thanks for sharing your story today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. We're going to continue down on the list, and I have firefighter Leah Kosolofski is here to speak as well. So Leah, I'm going to turn it over to you. Nice to meet you. I don't think we've met before.
Hey, how's it going? Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Thank you for inviting me to sit on the panel today. I'm a retired airport firefighter from Winnipeg Airport. Now in a job, in a role that's on the regulatory side. Part of my career when I first started in the early 90s, I started volunteer firefighting. That's how I got into the fire service, and then got into the aviation side. So my story, I was diagnosed with bladder cancer. It'll be 4 years, January 8th. In my situation, I kind of had a right lower quadrant discomfort. It wasn't even a pain. It was just a discomfort. And I'm one that, I'm very in tune with my body. I know when something's off. I'm always aware of how I'm feeling. So made an appointment with my GP, went to the doctor, told him about this discomfort I had, and sent me for an ultrasound. And, I don't know if it's the same in every province, but in Manitoba, you're waiting 2-3 months to get in for an ultrasound. So 3 months later, get in for an ultrasound, follow up with my doctor, nothing found. So he referred me to a gynecologist, thinking there might be issues there. Went to the gynecologist and nothing was found. She actually said that I had a hernia. I still to this day do not have a hernia. I don't know where she pulled that out of. But anyway, so I literally walked away from that appointment and threw my hands up in the air and went, well, I don't know what it is, right? So I kind of left it at that point because the tests were done. Months went by, I still had that right lower quadrant discomfort. It hadn't really changed. It was still the same discomfort. And then one day went to the bathroom, there was blood in my urine. And when I talk about blood in the urine, it was very pinpoint, bright red blood. Okay. And then I found I would go to the bathroom and not even a minute later, I'm like, gotta go to the bathroom again. And I was thinking, geez, that's odd. I just went to the bathroom. So those two things, I'm like, okay, make an appointment again with my GP, go back to him. explained what happened, went for an ultrasound again. And it was kind of weird because my appointment was like at 11 p.m. at night. So it was very odd. And I remember talking to the ultrasound tech and just having a brief discussion about firefighter cancer and how it's on the incline. We had a really good discussion about it. Afterwards, when I was getting dressed, she says to me, "So what were you saying about firefighter cancer?" And I said, you know, we just talked briefly again about it and how it's on the increase, it's on the incline. So then go to my GP appointment, talk to the doctor. He's like, yeah, they think they found something. They weren't 100% sure. So from there, went to the urologist, had a bladder scope done, came out of recovery, and the urologist said I have bladder cancer. So of course, everybody on this panel can relate to when you hear those words. You don't know what's in store for you. You're just in utter shock. So that was January 8th. I had the scope. 2 weeks later, I was back in day surgery. The urologist cut the tumor out, burnt it in that spot as well. You know, I look back and I think, what if I didn't have that discussion with that ultrasound tech, right? You know, maybe that little thing she saw, she would have just brushed over that, right? Who knows? We don't know. I think it turned out to be a positive thing. So after that, I've been going for scopes every 3 months, just follow up. 8 months later, I had another little tumor start right in the same vicinity of that original. So again, it got burnt in that area. And then I kept going every 3 months, and then just transitioned down to every 6 months. Just had a scope 2 weeks ago. Again, he found a growth, thought it was cancer, and my mind just went nuts again, right? Thinking, oh no, it's back again. And within 2 days, we got the pathology report back, which I was surprised at that. And it turned out to be benign. So thank goodness. Yeah, so here I am. I'm grateful that I stuck to what my body was feeling. Advocated with my doctor. My doctor actually, my GP, after all was said and done, I did a couple follow-ups with him. He sits down next to me in the chair in his office, and he puts his head against the wall, and he says to me, "I'm sorry." He says, "I had no idea, or bladder cancer wasn't even on his radar for somebody my age, because I was diagnosed at 46. You know, he said, if you were a 60, 70, 80-year-old that came into my office with those same signs and symptoms, he said, then I would have suspected bladder cancer in you." So, some of the gaps that I find, you know, aviation firefighting, right? There, you know, some people don't even know there is aviation firefighters, right? When I was doing my investigation with WCB, they asked me questions like, how many structure fires have you been to? So of course, structure fires was related to my volunteer firefighting, because we don't get a lot of fires at the airport. So you can all relax, it's very safe. I lost my train of thought there for a sec, sorry. Yeah, so WCB. So, you know, he asked specifically how many structure fires, and he didn't want to know anything about wildland firefighting. He says, I don't want to, it's not grass fires or wildland, how many structure fires? So I had mentioned, you know, how many I would have been involved in. But then I also got into the aviation side of firefighting. Yeah, we don't get a lot of fires, but we are mandated and regulated to do live fires every year. And for a big chunk of my year, up to maybe 3 years ago, we were walking through diesel fuel, raw diesel fuel, burnt diesel fuel, and then you're adding firefighting foam to that. You're adding dry chemical powder to that. So I basically told my WCB guy, you know, you're walking in a berm of chemical soup. And there's, you know, we do that once a year. So it's low frequency, but the risk is high. You know, and there's times where, you know, we didn't know there was decon back then. You know, cancer wasn't even a discussion ever had. So I have a good picture that shows I'm in front of the black plumes of smoke, and my yellow gear, my pant legs are black. You can't even see the reflective on the gear. It's black from the petroleum. You know, and then you're walking in that liquid, it gets in your boot, right? I don't know if anybody knows what a booter is. I don't know if that's a Manitoba thing or not, but that's when you get, you know, whether it's raining or whatever, you get water in your boot. So I had this chemical soup concoction that leaked into my boot over top. And then I trained the rest of the day like that. My pant legs were soaked, my socks, my boots were soaked. I trained the rest of the day and the next day in that. So I look back and I think, oh my God, but we didn't know, right? We didn't know back then. Some recommendations that I wanted to talk a little bit about is the presumptive cancer legislation, like Jenn was mentioning. Thank goodness we have that in Canada, because I'm hearing of firefighters in the States that are losing their homes because they don't have coverage. Never mind battling cancer, but now you're losing your home. You're losing everything. It's just, so I'm very thankful we have that in Canada. One thing I like to see though, for me in Manitoba, my cancer is covered. What if I move to BC or I move to Alberta and my cancer isn't under their presumptive cancer legislation? Am I still covered, right? I have no idea. So I think provinces need to get away from the silo effect, and we need to really all cover the same cancers right across all provinces and have the same coverage. It's ridiculous that one province, you know, covers 19 cancers like Manitoba, and another province only covers maybe 8 or 9 of that. You know, it's based on where you live, and that's crazy. My last point I wanted to mention is the gear. Okay, we wear the same gear in aircraft firefighting that we do for structural. I noticed over the years at the bottom of our pants, our fire pants, it's actually an option whether you can get the elastic cuff that seals around your boot or not have it, just have it open. Okay, so we switched our gear out every 5 years just because of the fuels and stuff. You can never really get it out of the gear. I started my career off with those elastics at the bottom of my gear and not really paying attention, right? Because I came from structural volunteer firefighting, you know, We never ever really had that. And then somewhere along the lines, when our gear got ordered, that elastic cuff was no longer there. And the only reason why I know this is because I kept every set of gear I've owned, and I've gone back and I looked at my gear. So we went 3 years without that elastic cuff. And now, because I was a captain and partially responsible for ordering gear, we now have that cuff back on the gear. But that shouldn't be an option, right? That should almost be a standard, whether you're structural or aviation, but more so in aviation, because you're getting aircraft fuel and fumes that can get up the pant leg, can get up the coat. Yeah, so I've talked long enough.
I'm intrigued. That's new information for me. I wrote it down. I think it's something that we can look into for sure, Leah. So thank you as well for sharing your story and bringing a different perspective. I think that likely at times our aircraft firefighters might feel as though they're not represented the way the rest of us are. So thank you for reminding us the valuable role that you play in our communities. And I have been reminded. And so thank you for challenging me to think differently about everybody that we represent. So a great conversation brought forward by yourself. And again, I'm just so thrilled that you're here healthy and happy, and hope that it stays that way for many, many years to come.
Great, thank you.
Last on our panel, before we get into some Q&As, and Chief Fredericks, I'm just going to cue you up when we're done with Jim O'Toole. I'm just going to come back and ask for you to present any of the gaps or recommendations you might have, and then I'll go into open Q&A. Jim, please introduce yourself and share a bit of your story.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Ken, thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here to talk about cancer in the fire service, such a very important topic. I've been a firefighter with St. John's Regional Fire Department here in Newfoundland for the last 23 years. My cancer world, I guess, started in around 2006 when I got involved with the advocacy with government to get presumptive laws brought to the province. Finally successful in 2015 with 11 cancers, and then added 8 more cancers in 2022. So we're at 19 cancers right now, which is great. Unfortunately, in 2018, I guess I drew the short straw, the guy that was involved with it for so long. And I received a diagnosis in 2018, in May of 2018. I unfortunately had a injury on my back, in my lower part of my back, what ended up being a bulge disc on my back. Ended up going in for a scan. Coming out, doctor called me and said, you know, we have a partial picture of your kidney, and we can see a shadow hanging off it. So I, needed to go back in for another scan. I did, came out, and my doctor called me and said, we see a mass and it has to come out immediately. So I had my surgery to remove 10% of my kidney and a golf ball size mass off the right side. It was renal cell carcinoma, stage 2. Luckily for me, knock on wood, that was all I required at that time, was the surgery. Back to work and back on the job in September, which was great. Fast forward about 5 months later, in October, from the initial kidney diagnosis, I ended up scratching a mole on the side of my head that's been there my whole life, expecting that it would heal, and it didn't for about 4 or 5 weeks. And a friend of mine was a plastic surgeon, and I called him and said, can you get this thing off the side of my head? And he did, and it ended up coming back as stage 2 melanoma. So skin cancer. It was unbelievable to think that within 5 months I could end up getting 2 diagnoses. And I was just, kind of thinking, okay, I had surgery the first time, now I'm going to have surgery again. All will be good. Boy, was I in for a rude awakening. I ended up over the next still going through it. The next 6 years, almost 6 years now. 5 surgeries, 23 radiations. I had an initial year of immunotherapy for a full year. Ended up with 4 recurrences. Ended up with another year of immunotherapy by oral pills. Thought that was the one that was going to do me in. I managed to get through it. And then in January I ended up with another recurrence and back in for 2 years. I finished in May of 2025 of immunotherapy. Had 4 months of 2 medications that were combined to get together. And then now I have what they're calling a maintenance. Nevo is the name of the one I'm on now, is for the next year and a half, I guess, or a little over a year to bring me up till May. So it's been quite a journey, but I've been very fortunate. The medication hasn't really knocked me down. A bit of tiredness. Not too bad. I've resumed back full duty on the trucks. I think that was probably one of the biggest parts of my recovery, was getting back to work, having a huge family support. The department that I work for has been huge support for me as well. No questions asked, whatever you need, was kind of how they treated me. And it was great to have that support. It was one less worry that we went through as a family. And I kind of want to put that in there with regards to that word family. Is, we're all here talking about firefighters across the country. There's a much broader picture when a firefighter gets diagnosed. And for me, at 38 years old, I have a wife. And at the time, my 2 boys were 9 and 6. So everything still has to continue here at home. She had a career. She has a career as well. She's a teacher. My 2 boys, all the activities they still have to get to while I'm recovering from surgeries. Everything still continues. So it was quite the journey, but I'm feeling, as of 2 months ago, I did receive a clear scan. I'm PET scanned every 3 months by my great, fantastic medical team. I'm not naive to think there's not problems in our healthcare system, but I haven't experienced it. I've certainly had a class act of everyone from the administration when you walk in through the door, to the people that clean the hospital, to the oncologists and surgeons and nurses. Everybody has been absolutely fantastic. It's been incredible. And I'm healthy. And that's the main thing. It took a while to get there, but I'm there. I feel great, back to doing the normal activities, back to running, something that I was a firm believer that if I was running, someone better be chasing me before I was diagnosed. But now when I got diagnosed, a couple of my buddies got me out and got me running. So it's something I fell in love with, and a great way to clear the mind. So it's certainly, I've certainly been very fortunate. Some people say it's been a hard road. It has been a hard road, but it is, I've been very fortunate and blessed man. I can tell you that. With regards, Ken, to the gaps, and speaking from, I've been involved in the Cancer Fire Service for some time. Before even Bill C-224 was brought through the legislature here in Newfoundland, we were kind of creating our own same idea of creating a firefighter task group or a working group, if you will. And we actually brought all the same stakeholders to the table. We brought in wildland, we brought in the federal aviation, we brought in the structural, we brought in volunteers, we brought everybody to the table. And we're actually having our 3rd meeting tomorrow, and we're actually developing a medical surveillance program. And I really think that's something that should be promoted across, as some of my colleagues have already said here today, about the importance of medical surveillance and early detection. And that's something that we're really focused on here in our province. And the presumption is, I find it, as Mary stated, and I think Leah said it as well, and Jenn, like, if we live, it shouldn't be dictated on where we live. We all have the same exposures. Toxins are toxins. Firefighting's firefighting. If you're exposed, you're exposed. And to have different laws and presumptive laws, and even outside of just are you covered, but even how we get there, and the different policies within workers' compensations right across the country. are totally different. So what if my cancer kidney was covered, but my melanoma wasn't at the time? So I did have to fight for mine. I did end up getting it covered under an occupational disease section of the legislation. But again, it's a internal policy here in Newfoundland Labrador's workplace system. So I would like to see a more broad across every province, kind of the same, and no different than the same thing with the medical surveillance program. There's lots of information out there now on different tests that need to be done for certain types of cancers at certain ages. I've had firefighters call me here, in their late 40s, can't get a colonoscopy because they're not meeting the threshold of 50 years old. And they've been exposed to the fire department for 20 years. So I just think that there's more education needed, especially to, and I'm speaking from my experience here in Newfoundland Labrador, is that, when you go to your first stop of your primary care, it's usually your general practitioner. And I think having information to be able to give a general practitioner about why you're requesting this test and why you want these tests done, I think it's important that that we have that and have that document to be able to put in their hand and say, this is why I'm asking. I'm not asking because I just want these tests done. I'm asking because I need these tests done, and this is why. So I really think that's somewhere where we should put some focus as well. I know we're talking about, through the bill, we're talking about Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. And I think it's really, and I know someone mentioned it earlier, I believe it may have been John, talked about the cultural change and the need for it. And we still have that issue right across the country. I know we still have it here, and I'm sure it's no different right across the entire country. And it's going to be the way how we promote Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month in January, and what information we put there. And I really think a key is going to be how it's promoted right across the country and how it's chosen to do so. And it's going to have to we need that cultural change. We've done a great job of a cultural change with regards to behavioral health. We're steady working at it with regards to cancer and the fire service, but I really think we need to really focus on that cultural change and to get the awareness and the education out. There's a great way that's coming up in January, but how we promote that, I think, is really going to dictate how many people actually engage in that month-long education and awareness. Just one other thing is also the research part that is, a part of this bill as well, about suggestions. And it's a lot of the research is out there as well. And what I found across, and just talking to other firefighters across the country, is we have claims in all provinces being denied because they're saying they don't have the research. They're not looking globally at the research that is available. And I really think that's a poor way to just shut it down and say, okay, we're only going to look at, we're not big on a lot of research here in this country with regards to this topic. But however, we are all around the world. And I really think it's imperative to make sure that we have that information available to everyone. So what I suggested in our meeting was to have a one-stop shop portal provided, and all that information, whether it's research, whether it's decontamination, best practices, whether it's even behavioral health supports and family supports for people, have a one area where all firefighters can have the link and have the availability to get the same information. Because I'm having it in this province as well, with regards to rural areas, not having the information available to them. And they're calling all kinds of individuals saying, what do I do? What do I do? And I think it's really important that we all have those availabilities, because I think I heard it a couple of times. Doesn't matter what uniform you wear. It doesn't matter whether you're a volunteer career, aviation, a chief. It does not matter. We're all human beings, and we all have families that I'm sure love us and want us to come home. And I really think everyone having that available information is probably one of the most top priorities that I think we should be focused on around this bill. I think I've spoken long enough. Sorry to take up some time. I just wanted to get some key points across, but certainly open to any questions if there are any. So thank you, Ken, very much.
Thank you very much. And there's no apologies needed from any of you. I wish we could stay all day, in all fairness. So there's so much important information that you are all here sharing. And again, I thank you so much for that. Jim, I think you picked up on a couple of really key points. First and foremost, all of you have talked about the value of the framework, the value of determining what is consistent. How do we work together on all components of the fine details of this legislation? Health Canada is here. They're hearing you. So don't think that you're not being heard. You're absolutely. This is the value of this workshop for today and tomorrow. So thank you for continuing to share your stories. The other point I think, Jim, that's really important was the component of family. And I know you all know it, but Jim, you're the first to say it. And so thanks for calling that out. You've got your hand risen, Jim. I'm going to go back to you for 30 seconds.
I just wanted a quick comment to make that I don't know if I was voluntold or I was told, appointed to do it, but we are now working to bring the Firefighter Cancer Support Network to Canada. We are now incorporated in Canada. We are able to, get kits out through our US office. However, we're still not allowed to fundraise yet. Those are going through, that application's going through the process. I've got a great team with me, a young lady, Jenn McMullen out of Ottawa Fire Services, Kevin Tomick out of BC, Steve Farina out of BC. We're really working to bring our support system similar to what the US has, but we really want to make Firefighter Cancer Support Network Canada a reality for all firefighters in this country. Thank you, Ken.
No, good work on that. Good work on that. John, as I alluded to, Chief Fredericks, I'm just going to come back to you for a few minutes on your number one gaps and recommendations.
Yeah, okay. Anybody that knows me, I've been in the fire service for 34 years, and I worked in 3 provinces and 2 territories. So when I was diagnosed, the oncologist said that I had a window of 3 months that I had to come in contact with some type of chemical. So it was fast and aggressive cancer. So I made a claim, and it was deemed occupational hazard. So I made a claim with WSCC here in the territories. They denied me, said that that type of cancer was 10 years. And I was only in the territory for 7. So, but they suggested, and I'm glad they did, that I should try for a province that I spent at least 10 years in, and I did with my home province, Nova Scotia, and they accepted the claim. But go back to Leah's comment or question. They didn't accept it in the territories here, so I had to go to back to Nova Scotia, where I spent most of my career, to be covered. So the biggest thing I think is it wouldn't have helped me, but early detection I think is a big thing, and I don't think that I know we're not having the screening done here in the territories for cancer, so we have to really improve in that area. So that's all that I've got to add to it. So
that's fine. I thank you again, John, and I appreciate everybody. We're running out of time, but I knew this was going to happen. So we've got 3 minutes left. I'm going to do 2 things. First of all, I'm going to let you know that the Menti that is being created in the background will be released entirety with the report after this session. We will share it as soon as we can. I have this is a speed round, speed question. So I'm going to ask in 3 words or less. Number 1 recommendation that you've got an elevator speech with somebody. You've got the audience of 126 other people, speed round. I'm just going clockwise in my screen, and Mary, you're first up on my screen. Number 1 recommendation.
Making general practitioners aware of the dangers of firefighting, the fact that it's a carcinogenic occupation, and therefore testing should be made available earlier than the general public.
Jen, I think she took yours just by your body language, but if she didn't, what's yours, Jen?
Mine is absolutely the same. It's about educating not specifically the general practitioners, because I would suggest that we often have a relationship with them. So we may be in a position, depending on who they are, to help educate them. But obviously it's a bigger picture thing. So advising all the players that are out there that this is, that we're at an increased risk, and obviously need some different screenings and helping, whatever. Anyways, sir.
Awesome. No, it's good. Good. Leah.
One thing I would say is more stats on airport firefighters. I think, would I have been covered if I wasn't a volunteer structural firefighter? Who knows? But I think that's one area that we need to look more into.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jim.
Medical screening, definitely important. The portal that I mentioned, some type of awareness education spot that everyone can go to get to, and hitting on Leah's kind of, I guess, somewhat a national cancer registry would be great to have those statistics for everyone in this country.
Awesome. John.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we really need a culture change in the fire service, and hidden in the more preventive side of things, educate on the hazards when they're going to school. And I'll end with a joke. The two things that firefighters hate: change and the way things are. So
there you go. Thank you so much. Folks, this was my my absolute privilege and honor to moderate this panel. There's going to be some great panels over the next 2 days. There are 3 more sessions, but I'm not moderating those. So this was my chance to moderate with you folks. I'll be in all the other sessions, but I'll be in the background like everybody else is. And perhaps I'll get a chance to just circle back tomorrow at the end of the day to more formally say thank you. But until then, I'll just see if our executive director, Dr. Sardine, has anything to add before we cut it off for until our next session. So back to you, Tina.
Thank you, Chief McMullen. I just want to say a huge thank you, as you did, to our panelists. You have inspired us, you have touched us, you have ignited our passion to continue to work on this issue with you. We're all with you, we're behind you, and we're really looking forward to seeing how we can contribute to this framework nationally. So Chief McMullen, all of our panelists, Health Canada, our audience members, all of you, thank you so much.